What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another video. Of course, unscripted. Where have I ever scripted any of my videos? I just have an idea, and I talk about it. Welcome, my dear friends, to European Law, your prime and chief channel for all things fantasy, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm just a Czech, Polish fella who likes to talk about fantasy and science fiction. So, I've already made a video about this a couple of months ago, but I thought I could reiterate it. I thought I could upload it again, well, of course, a new video talking about the same matter, because it has come to my attention that my subscribers, they are not getting notifications to my more wholesome videos, to my more sophisticated videos, to my more favorite videos, as much as I would like to. Now, they are, of course, getting all the notifications for the Rings of Power reviews, but I'm not doing these every day. I don't want to do these forever. Now, the second season just ended, and I don't want to touch that topic for a long, long time. And so I will be promoting these videos more and more. So please, if you could just share this video with your friends. Tell me in the comments down below if you got notification for it, if you were a subscriber of mine, or how you came upon this video. I'm, of course, talking about Elric of Melniboné versus Geralt of Rivia. Because there was a, not subscriber, there was a YouTuber in the past, and I can never remember who that was. I'm sure many of you will tell me in the comments down below, who said blatantly and bluntly that Geralt of Rivia is a rip-off of Elric of Melniboné, full stop, and people have been repeating it after that YouTuber, and they have been in my comment sections, in the videos that I make also, and I always hate when some YouTuber utters something that is not really thought through properly, and then people are just repeating it and parroting it, and I'm like, yeah, I know where you heard it. It's not really true. So why is that not true? Why I don't agree with the statement that Geralt of Rivia, or The Witcher, Wiedźmin, is a rip-off of Elric of Melniboné? Well, because not everything is as easy as you would like it to be. Quite obviously, there is a lot of inspiration, there is a lot of influence. Andrzej Sapkowski quite obviously took a lot of inspiration from Elric of Melniboné, but also from Polish mythology and from Slavic mythology, from European mythology in general. And not only myths, but also folk tales. Now, the stories of Geralt of Rivia are filled with even short stories that are parallels to old folk tales and fairy stories that I was listening to at my bedside when I was a little kid. They also hint, Sapkowski also hints, among others, on the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the Beauty and the Beast, Baba Yaga, and the character of Czert, which is basically a devil, this kind of a demon character who appears in, seems to me, like 99% of Czech fairy stories. And Geralt of Rivia himself, the character, is of course a wandering Wiedźmin, a wandering wizard. Basically a bounty hunter who hunts monsters and fights, like creatures for money. And sometimes we could say and argue that they are, trying to uphold the, peace and prosperity among humans. They are shielding humans against vile creatures, so on and so forth. And they, of course, have to go through the trial of grass. I don't know the exact terminology in English, because I've always only read The Witcher in Polish and Czech. So I know the terminology in Polish and Czech. I don't really know what the names are in English, because I haven't really even played the video games. I'm still very sick. I've got a cold, so if I'm coughing, I'm not editing that out. I never do. So, Geralt of Rivia is this rugged, nerve herder, wandering character, always, always on the way, if he isn't at Kaer Morhen, having his adventures. Then, of course, dealing with the prophecy, dealing with Cyrilla, dealing with Yennefer, having his own relationships, and his wanderings and his adventures all being kind of overshadowed by this grander story of a war against the Nilfgaardians, and the aforementioned prophecy with Ciri. Now, Elric of Melniboné is such a different character from Geralt of Rivia. You could consider Geralt of Rivia to be your kind of like everyday fantasy hero. Of course, there are more shades of grey to Geralt of Rivia than, for example, to the book Aragorn that, you know, Tolkien wrote. But he is definitely more of a like classic not superhero, hero, fantasy hero than Elric of Melniboné. Whereas Elric of Melniboné, the heir to the throne of the Dragon Isle, the master, the emperor of the Melnibonians, or who have ruled over the Dragon Isle for centuries and for millennia, and now are on a decline. A race that have become so advanced, the race that have become so skilled in sorcery, magic, dark arts and art, that they have cast aside all humanity. They have cast aside most emotions that are quite normal for ordinary humans. They have cast aside even any notions and ideas for decency, for friendship, love and passion and true bravery. They are quite literally a race of hedonistic, vicious, sadomasochistic bastards who love torture, murder, war, who love all kinds of hedonistic things. And Elric is the last emperor of Melniboné, quite literally. And I will be spoiling things in this video, by the way, so if you haven't read Elric or Geralt, you might want to leave, read those stories and then come back. And so, of course, the more we progress with the story of Elric of Melniboné, the more he is kind of a little bit similar to Geralt of Rivia. But it is precisely at the beginnings of those two stories where you see the greatest differences. So, Michael Moorcock, the author of Elric of Melniboné, he isn't really secretive about the fact that his works, and Elric is among them, is or chief and prime of those stories. This is a criticism of aristocracy, the criticism of the higher spheres of society. He was and has been, he is still, very much of a leftist, liberal leftist person. The old school kind of liberal person, of course. Nothing against that. Everybody has their own political views. I don't care about political views of authors that I read. I only care about if they write good stories. And so all the Melniboné and the emperors of the Dragon Isle, those stories are basically his critique of the different strata of our society. He's very much critical, and he then reflects that in the character of Elric, who is very different from all the previous emperors of Melniboné. He has got emotions, he knows empathy, he knows sympathy, he knows love and passion. He wants his people to get better. He wants his people to be more human, and that is why he embarks on an adventure into the like the rest of the world in order to learn how to be human, how to be normal again. He realizes that his peoples, and he counts himself among them, even though he's so different, they have separated themselves from humanity so much that without an external help, there is no really help, there is no salvation. And so in the first stories, we follow Elric of Melniboné as the emperor of Melniboné, and dealing with his cousin Yirkun and his other cousin, female cousin Simoril, whom he wants to marry. And it's just, you know what I see? I see more similarities with the Targaryens. I see George R. R. Martin ripping off Elric of Melniboné much more than Andrzej Sapkowski did, if we want to use the term ripping off. I would once again use the term inspiration in influence. Do you know in how many ways people at Games Workshop and Black Library were inspired by Elric of Melniboné? Quite a lot. Elric itself, the character, this is a highly influential work that has inspired probably as many authors, fantasy authors, as Tolkien did. And that visual style of, you know, the character being like an albino, basically, like this gothic emo style albino character, this can be found throughout fantasy literature, like, a lot. And so there is this tragedy that happens at the end of the first story. And then there is the tragedy that happens at the end of the second story, which is even greatest tragedy, when Elric kills his love, Simoril. She perishes on the tip of Stormbringer, the demon blade, the rune sword, the brother of Mornblade. And then for the rest of, I mean, at least for a long, long time, for the majority of the following stories, he just regrets his actions. He is constantly pondering over existence itself. This is a very philosophical work of art. He ponders about really the meaning of life and the sense of life, and if we are free or not, if there is such a thing as fate, and if the powers of chaos and the good powers are actually also overruled by some other entity, by which, of course, he is pondering over and debating the existence of a god. And so, throughout the majority of Elric of Melniboné stories, Elric is basically a little emo wimp. And there's this other difference or similarity that people could argue about, and that is the usage of the potions that gives them powers. It isn't really the powers that are given to Elric of Melniboné when he ingests the potions that he makes. They kept him alive. He, as an albino, you know, being born already very feeble and weak and sick, this is the only thing how he can stay alive. And then, of course, after acquiring Stormbringer, it is the sword, the demonic sword, that gives him power. And him being allied with the Lords of Darkness, with Arioch himself, the chief of the Dark Gods of Chaos. I don't think Geralt of Rivia would be fine with anything like this. It doesn't mean that Elric is happy about it, but there are many instances of Elric just being like a truly selfish bastard, which means a true Melnibonéan. Whereas with Geralt of Rivia, we can see the prevalence of the heroism. We can see the prevalence of like the good old style, mythological, legendary fantasy hero, much more than with Elric of Melniboné. And the potions that Geralt ingests, they give him power, but he can survive without them. He takes those potions when he is about to fight some monsters. And even without those potions, he's a very and extremely skilled fighter. Which doesn't mean that Elric isn't, but he wouldn't be able to live for long without the potions or without the sword. And so, Elric of Melniboné is a tragic story of a tortured soul, a tortured Übermensch character that has been living outside ordinary humanity, his race, for so long, doesn't even remember what it is to be a human anymore. And his quest then, after this tragedy of killing Simoril, which ends his initial quest, his next quest is to really find the meaning of life. So this is a very high reading, very good feeling reading, if you know what I mean. You really have to think, you really have to stop and philosophize when you're reading Elric of Melniboné. And on top of that, it is a very well written fantasy story. And Michael Moorcock isn't even a fantasy fan. I mean, he doesn't like fantasy very much, but he also says something that I agree with to an extreme extent. I'm just putting it back into my bookshelf. He is saying, and by the way, have you read these graphic novels that are adapting Elric Of Melniboné into the graphic novel format? I know that there are new ones, like French ones, but these old ones, look at that. Illustrated by P. Craig Russell and Roy Thomas. Roy Thomas wrote them. And of course, Michael Moorcock also worked on them. So, look at the artwork. Look at that. So, it's a highly philosophical work of art. So, Moorcock says that if you want to write good fantasy, if you're looking for inspiration, it is better for you to go further back than just to Tolkien or Robert E. Howard or Lord Dunsany. You have to go quite back. You have to go to myths and legends. You have to go to Beowulf. You have to go to Gilgamesh. You have to go to the beginnings. You have to go to the real origins of fantasy. If you want to write something truly original. The more original you want to get, the further back you need to go for inspiration. Everybody, almost everybody is inspired by Tolkien or by like Robert E. Howard. But why would I read something that is 100% inspired by Tolkien or by Robert E. Howard when I can read Tolkien or Robert E. Howard? And that is why I find stories like Michael Moorcock's Elric Of Melniboné so fascinating. And of course also The Witcher. Because as much as it was inspired by Michael Moorcock's Elric, it is still a work of art different enough for me to enjoy it extremely, for me to consider it one of my favorite fantasy stories. I'm sure I have forgotten to say many things. That happens when you don't script your videos, but I don't have time for scripting my videos. And I would like you to tell me, my dear friends, what do you think? Tell me all about it. Thank you very much for watching, and am I.